Welcome back to the Manage to Win podcast. Our episode is sponsored by Habitly.com, and habits are really processes. They are best practice behaviors that highly successful people nail down. They really get them and they play to their strengths. Check out Habitly.com. There's some great content there for you to be your best, and it's very inexpensive. Now, today's episode of the Manage to Win podcast is with Jon Darbyshire. He is the CEO and co-founder of SmartSuite. This is a no-code platform that basically organizes a lot of the key processes in your business so you're freed up to do what's most important. I didn't expect it, but I actually asked him a lot of questions about his product because that relates to best practice processes that we cover on the show. He didn't pitch the product so much. We just discussed what we've found to be best for organizations like yours and mine. I think you'll find it valuable. There's some really good tips here. Let's dive in. Jon, you are like the business optimization guru. And not only have you worked with massive companies, but you have also been involved, I think my understanding is like 400 startups. So I'm wondering, you got all this experience. What is one area of their business, and I'm sure there's more than one, that you see commonly that people in our audience are overlooking where they could optimize and how that might help them?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a loaded question, a lot of different directions. But let me drive into one part of that. But having the chance to work with so many different founders in different industries, but mainly on the software side, mostly SaaS-based companies that I've been able to focus with on there. And in a lot of cases, those companies, as they begin to get started, they spend as much time focused on the internal processes that they need to put in place to manage hiring people and payroll and accounting and CRM and some marketing things. They spend a lot of time talking about that. In some cases, more time than talking about the actual product or service that they're trying to develop. And for me, that's a big red flag when that happens. And, you want to dive in and find one or two platforms that can help you manage the bulk of that information as fast as you can, and just take that infrastructure out of the conversation as you begin to grow to the 15, 20 employee perspective.
It's interesting. It reminds me that one of the hard lessons I've had to learn, and I'm still forcing myself to learn, is that we only have so much time.
Right.
And if we're focused in those other areas which have value, but they're not really going to drive the organization. So when you're working with companies, where are you typically look beyond this area you just covered, kind of the blocking and tackling areas, although part of that was marketing, CRM, sales, that type of thing. Where are the biggest optimization points where there's a high ROI that you see?
Yeah, I think if we're talking specifically around young companies, startups in that 1 to 50 kind of range to get going, automation is really key for them because they can't, typically don't have the funding to hire all the people for all the positions that you need to have in place. So you have to think about ways that I can automate those routine tasks that happen day to day that I need to do. Marketing is a great example of that, of being able to, automate the onboarding emails to the team members or the people that are using your product that are coming in, the outreach that needs to happen on the first day, the 5th day, the 10th day, outreach to people that just sign up on your website, maybe that are just interested to understand what's happening with your company and how do I interact with them, all my social media campaigns that I want to execute maybe every couple of days on LinkedIn and whatever that network might be. It's easy to automate those where you can write the content one time, set all of the triggers. There's lots of different ways, different products you can use to do the automation, but then it's more set it and forget it. So you kind of set the strategy in place, and then you let this begin to execute while you can focus on other parts of the business. And that's just one small example, but there's if you're a software development company, there's just lots of processes and automation that can be built into that just makes your development team more efficient as well.
Well, can you give me an example of like a before and after type of story? So, I don't need to know the company, but with some numbers so the audience can kind of grasp how much this can help them gain, efficiencies or free up some hours of key people or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I think like if we're talking SaaS-based software companies, again, one of the key things there is the onboarding process and interaction with the customers that needs to happen as they come to your website. Maybe they sign up for free if you're a product-led growth type company, but there's some level of action that needs to take place with that person initially to kind of build that trust for them to go down maybe a 2-week, 14-day trial period. The majority of that can be automated, even in a way that the person on the other end feels it's personal to them. You can create videos, and in videos, you can use editing technology now that says, hey, John, I saw that you just signed up for a trial, and I can include your name in there in the actual video that I've already recorded, right? I can change, Jon to David in the actual text, and it will say that. AI will actually use my voice and say that. So you can give the perception that things are personal as part of the onboarding. But once you set that up, you can have hundreds or thousands of people coming in each week that feel like, hey, they built a personal connection with an onboarding specialist or even the CEO of a company from that simple technology. I can just tell you, we use some of that in our own company, SmartSuite, and we still do personalized videos as well. But to the masses, when we need to do things, I always try to personalize it in that manner that I just said. And I can tell you that the response rates are dramatically higher when you add some of the personal touches versus just a standard, kind of boilerplate email that you send back out to someone.
That's really interesting. So does the AI trip up when it's, I assume, you're training. Talk to me about this. How does that work? Because I would think if it's moving from me saying, hi, John, to hi, Alfonso, it's going to be, or whatever. It's going to be weird.
No, it's actually, there are some names that has that problem, but the base vocabulary is there. And the way that it works is you record a video, it then transcribes all the text. So you have the text version. You can go into the text and cut out sentences, and it actually cuts the video as well. Or you can change words in the video, and it will actually use your voice and your cadence to insert that back in for you. And that's just one little trick that a lot of product-led growth companies use to help build a more personal relationship at that, the first connection they have with the customer.
That's interesting. Now, what product does that? Is that part of your SmartSuite, or is that?
It is not. I do not have the product name here, but I'm happy to get that, and we can put that in one of our social posts so people can use that. But our marketing team uses that quite often.
Well, that's great. Well, then that leads me in. So talk about your SmartSuite and what exactly you're doing there, and why people need that today, versus it wasn't available in the past.
Sure. Yeah. So SmartSuite was kind of the idea behind what I was mentioning earlier with the 400 startups that I've invested in. I spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs. We spend too much time talking about infrastructure related items, either in board meetings or just in general discussions, and not as much time on the product or service that they're trying to launch that's there. So I got frustrated with that after some time. I've been in the no-code space for about 30 years. So I just said, I want to build a single no-code platform that will help organizations manage any process or project in their company on a single platform. It comes with built-in templates so that if I need a CRM, I could say I want a best-in-class CRM. You say, maybe that's not for me. I just need a middle-of-the-road CRM, or maybe I just need CRM Lite. I'm just getting started. So we give you templates that are full-blown processes like that across 35 categories in an organization, across any type of business, whether you're construction, real estate, sales, marketing, doctor, lawyer, doesn't matter. We have the template. So the idea there is to take away the need to work with 4 or 5 or 6 different products to kind of manage the core pieces of your business and have a single no-code platform that allows you to start with the best-in-class process, but tailor that specific to your needs instead.
So in the SmartSuite, I can have a CRM and I can choose what level I want. And you've got the CRM as part of the suite, right? And then you've also got a product that I can use for onboarding new employees. So like an HR onboarding. So you've got different templates. I can do that are editable, I assume.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It allows a startup company, we're talking specifically about startups, to kind of come in and say, I have these 5 things that I need to accomplish right now, and I don't have to go by Salesforce and HubSpot and Zendesk and maybe Bamboo HR. Like I get all of that in a single platform that's there. The beauty of that is, let's say you have a CRM and you have marketing efforts that are happening and you have customer care. All of those need access back to accounts and contacts, right? So typically you have those duplicated in multiple places. You're always trying to figure out how to sync those up. To us, that's just a link from one to the other, and the information is available to everybody in all the places. So you don't have to duplicate the data. I just link from my customer care when I'm entering a ticket. It just links to accounts. I pick the account, I pick the contact, that type of thing. So it just makes your life much easier when you're growing and building. And we support both startups from a couple of people all the way to Fortune 1000 companies, through that same no-code platform.
It's interesting. I don't normally go into products, but I'm kind of intrigued. So because I have a smattering of experience at my age and experience. So let's talk about the marketing side. So the marketing side, you have some marketing capabilities that will enable people to do emails, newsletters. Is that correct? Is that connected in there as far as, so I'm building my database of people and then I can go out to them?
You can. So we have automations that allow you to look back into your contact records, use rules, and then notify people that could be a Slack channel. It could be a text message. It could be an email. You could use your own Google email, so it's personal from you each time you send out. We also integrate with MailChimp. So if you just want to take information for us, throw it in MailChimp. Maybe you have tens of thousands of people that you're tracking at different level, and you want to set up campaigns there. So we give you the ability to do both. You can integrate with your favorite products, or you can do those core capabilities in SmartSuite.
So one of the hurdles that comes in with that, because I think we actually do that now, what you're describing is, with MailChimp, does your product help maintain a list in MailChimp that's going to be current, or does it have to be exported each time?
No. So we have an integration. You can use a number of other products like Zapier or Make. And every time you make an update in SmartSuite, we can pass that information directly to MailChimp. So the records are always up to date. You can change data about certain contacts. If somebody comes back and says unsubscribe, you can communicate back to SmartSuite to say this person is unsubscribed as well.
So it's all automated and save me time. Now, another area that a lot of startups do poorly, which is our core competency, is basically how you manage, how you hire, how you manage, how you develop, how you retain people. So, and I have background in software and in HR software, and particularly performance management side. So you're talking about saving time. You've mentioned some things with people, and onboarding them. So you got onboarding process. Do you also do some of the applicant tracking features where you can pull in get resumes off of job sites or whatever, and go through a process of evaluating those within within groups of people in your company?
Yeah. So we track from the minute that you've identified somebody that you want to come into your process. We can then allow you to track that candidate all the way through, the interviews and whatever process that you have in place internally to decide if that might be the right resource for you, all the way through hiring. And then once you hire, we track, all of the onboarding pieces that you would want to do maybe in the first 3 weeks to get that person onboarded. And then we continue that all the way through the evaluation process. So maybe you want to do quarterly or semi-annual evaluations of folks, or even annual. So we can track all of that information that leads to compensation increases, bonuses, those types of things.
Yeah. And then, so that's another thing that I've found. Quite frankly, I was involved in performance management software back in 2002 to early 2006, only January 2006. And I haven't found a product I would recommend since. They're either too kludgy because they got too many things, bells and whistles on them. It's just too confusing, or they're some software developer who copied what they think is a way to set goals and track them and do reviews, but they really don't understand the process at all. And so it's, like Zoho, quite frankly, that, they don't really understand how that should flow and work. They have some of the bells and whistles, so that's a challenge. How do you, with each of these areas now? So now I'm talking about you as kind of a startup, okay, instead of these 400, but how do you bring in the subject matter expertise to make certain that each of these areas you're getting the key things in that you want to get, so you can attract the people who maybe you kind of went through this Goldilocks routine of, low level, mid level, high level, where you hit those correctly and the UI is the way it should be. And I haven't seen your product. So I'm coming here without a bias, but I'm kind of interviewing you just because what you're saying sounds very appealing, but it also sounds complicated and it would be tough.
Yeah. So I think the way that things work with the templates is that we work with subject matter experts in different areas to build the initial templates that are there. And then the power of our community is that as we work with customers and customers come back and share ideas, we're doing it this way. We've added this feature, and we'll update our templates to support that capability and notify our customers that, hey, here's an even better way to do this. What happens even more often is we add more templates. So let's take the marketing side. People come to us and say, I need to manage my podcast listing. That's all I need. I don't want all the other stuff. I just want a solution that just lets me track, the people that I want to reach out to maybe be guests on my podcast, to track and organize the scheduling of that, and then to keep track of my recordings. We do the same thing for blog posts, and those have been added at the request of marketing agencies that are doing that on behalf of people. So we have, podcast agencies that use us versus, an SEO, type marketing agency versus maybe a branding agency. Each of them have different processes that they focus on, and all of those we make available back in the product. And let me say one thing briefly. We're talking about startups and HR and that, but what we believe at SmartSuite is when you need to manage groups of people, the very best way to do that is, especially if you're a startup, is to start with, quarterly goals and objectives for the company, to really understand the areas that you need to focus on in that area, for that period of time, to set metrics so you can judge what those are. And then when you hire people, you link back, their quarterly reviews back to the goals and metrics of the company, so that somebody could say, I have 5 things to do, but only 3 of them relate to goals and objectives. Okay, I probably need to do those 3 things first before I do these other 2 things that are here. So for entrepreneurs, if you can better organize the company from the beginning with people coming in, it makes them, more efficient and, feel a part of the process, when they're able to track the work they do against those goals and objectives.
No, I definitely agree. A goal hierarchy is missing in most companies. There's a lot of disconnect. And sometimes the founders are setting goals, or targets is what we call them, that are way out there, visionary stuff. But then the tactical side really doesn't get built in, and there's no connection with the hierarchy, and often they have too many goals, or they're not clear and measurable. I recommend that people have 3 types of goals. They have financial, they have client experience, and then they have company culture or professional development. And they may only have one, you speak of quarter. I used to go with the annual goals. I'm fully on board with you now that, you need to set these quarterly and manage those.
If you're a startup, the most important thing for you typically is revenue, right? Revenue is going to get you funding. Clients going to get you funding, right? It's rare that you have all the funding that you need, when you originally start. So there has to be a focus on that, and everybody in the company has to understand, what is the main goal? We need 300 customers this month, or this much revenue, and then you answer the why. So everybody on the team understands it's not just a goal, but I need to describe to you why this goal is important to our company. So it helps the team members buy into, the goals and objectives by understanding the why for that as well. And I'm big, just like you, on not too many goals. I love in the 3 to 5, if you have 7, that's maybe too many, right? You've got to maybe pare it down to what's important. But then each team can have their own set of 3 to 5 goals that relate back to the overall company goals. So you have more goals overall in the company, but as a vision for the company, you're not trying to go too many directions. You're just trying to say, hey, here's what's most important at this point in time.
Yeah. And then other things can be tasks. And so you've got the tracking in place with the goal hierarchy and everything for the goals. And I'm not saying you need to have this, but I'm just curious. Do you also have, for those task lists, those daily priorities, whatever, do you have any tracking mechanism for people on that?
That's what we excel at. So we have 44 different field types that you could use to build, as you build your processes. A whole subset of that is around assignments and due dates and statuses and percent completes, right? And all that information can roll up. And what happens a lot of times in an organization is you may have a person that's involved in 3 or 4 different processes or projects, and they're getting assigned a task in different areas. And you have to go into that one area to see your task. In SmartSuite, we let you go into the one area, but we also have a My Work section. So it rolls everything that's assigned to you up into one list, shows it by due date and by priority, and what it's linked to. So you just have, here's my list of the things I need to accomplish over this period of time.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And so then do you also, because you've got all this stuff going on, you must have a method where if I'm having weekly meetings with my people, a huddle that's, might be 15 minutes, might be 30 minutes, probably not an hour if I'm doing it weekly. That you have a place for them to, can you actually set an agenda in addition to writing notes, or is it just notes?
No, you can do both. So you can have the agenda for each meeting, and then you can track the action items or results that came out of that. We're in our own company, we follow an agile process across every part of the company, not just software development, meaning that we do daily stand-ups with each team for 5 to 15 minutes. So that's the beginning of each day, where the people say, this is what I accomplished yesterday. This is what I'm working on today. And these are the blockers. I either have blockers or don't, meaning I need help from somebody, something that's on my list I can't get done because of something else. Our company, we have employees in 9 different countries. So I spend the first hour and a half of my day on the phone where I touch every member across all of those countries in a daily stand-up. And that kind of sets the tone for everything that needs to get done. And as a startup, that allows me to know immediately if somebody's not working on the right thing, or if they're blocked on something that's super important for me to get done that I need to prioritize other people to help out. But in most, SaaS-based companies, that's become a pretty standardized process, especially with remote work being so popular now.
Yeah. And so where do you find the communication breakdowns are in those 400 startups that you've worked with, or within, it sounds like with your product, when there's communication breakdowns, you're addressing them. But where do you find the most common or biggest loss of time, or people getting upset, losing a client or losing an employee because there's lack of communication? And yeah.
That's probably the number one cause for a lot of early startup failures when you have small teams of like 8 to 10 people, and you're when those people are working remotely, when you're not all in the same geographic location. Which I have to say that the majority of those 400 startups now have some level of remote work associated. It's amazing how fast remote work is taking over. That's there, but that's why we like to preach that the agile process is so important to keep people involved, because they have to feel connected even though they're not in the same office. And if you don't take that 5 to 10 to 15 minutes each morning to have that stand up, they may feel disconnected for an entire day and not productive. If you were in an office, I would just walk over to your office and ask the question. It doesn't happen as much with remote work as it does when you're in that office setting. But the good part of that is that remote work tends to be more productive because you don't have all those sidebar conversations, and people, if they're tasked right, they just go get their work done. And I'm a huge proponent of where remote work is heading because of that, just the productivity levels.
Yeah. So I'm curious, I'll put myself on the stand here. So I have 2 people that report directly to me, and they don't interact with anybody else. So I do have a daily huddle, but I do it one-on-one with each of them. I might combine it in the future because there's becoming more and more overlap. But then I have other people that report to me who have teams of people of their own. And I don't have a daily with them, but I do very diligently have a weekly with them that's up to an hour, where it's typically close to an hour. We're really going through things. But I don't do the daily because we're really on sync. We follow the same process that you're recommending. I use a little bit different acronym. We say we're pursuing target destinations or targets. So you follow a map. So I have a map agenda where you cover the past stuff and the metrics, which is M, and then the adjustments, what's new, and then that comes the plan. So the adjustments would also have the problems. And so we're very similar in that approach. but I'm doing that week in and week out with them, but they're interacting with others. So would you say I'm wrong for that? Should I meet with those people that have meetings with their people? What would you advise?
Yeah, I'll tell you what we do and what I recommend to a lot of startups. We found that Slack is wonderful for certain parts of the business. And one area is that we have a Slack channel. It's called Daily Stand Up. We have it for each of our core teams. And that team has their stand up, but each person goes into the Slack channel and says the same thing. That's what I did yesterday. These are the 5 things I'm working on today. These are my blockers. So if somebody else on another team just wants to know what's happening in sales, what's happening in marketing, software development, it's all in the channel. And they can see that information instantly. And I can tell you that the millennials and Gen Zers, as just a cohort group, they expect that level of information. They want to do their job, but they're very interested to know what other people are doing in the company in their jobs as well. So for startups of 100 or less, I'm a big proponent of, hey, those daily Slack channels. You can do the same thing in SmartSuite in our product. We have a lot of customers that use it that way. I've just found that that's one way that Slack is very efficient with communication. And I can go into Slack, and if I want to just see what somebody said that they were doing and what they worked on over the last week, I just filter on their name, pulls up all their communications back. It just makes it simple.
Yeah, so that way you're not actually taking everyone's time. It's a lot quicker. They can scan it, they can access it, but it's kind of there. And also you could refer back when there's an issue.
It is. I think for me, what I like to do is I like to see what people said they were going to do versus what was accomplished, right? And sometimes people accomplish a lot more, but sometimes they'll say, I'm doing this today. And then you look, and 3 days later, they keep saying, I'm doing this today. I'm doing this today. It doesn't get done. Yeah. And that's when I know that usually I need to jump in. There's something not right in that process, or they're waiting on something that they need help with.
Yeah. Interesting. So I'll have to go. So probably the people I work with would do it in teams because they have that. But for us internally, we'd have to decide how we wanted to do it if we wanted to take that approach. But that's interesting. And then how do you handle as far as tracking development? So particularly you mentioned millennials, Gen Z, et cetera. Everybody wants to be learning, growing in their career. Is there something also in SmartSuite where, you not only have these goals, and some of them may be learning related, but how are you tracking the growth side of it?
Yeah, so we do a couple things that help with employee growth. So in SmartSuite, we use our own product, SmartSuite, to manage every process in the company, and we're transparent across every one of those processes with every employee. So if somebody's interested to know what's the development team working on, and what's in this sprint, and who's assigned to what, that's just one view. They just click on it and they see, here's all the details, the current status, that's that. So it helps people in the organization feel more confident about what's happening in the organization and that they're a part of that piece. The second part of what you're asking is, how do I grow in development? If you're a software engineer, we have learning aids and resources that we've accumulated that are tracked in records in SmartSuite that let you come in and pick those and see those, and you can track if you've taken those courses, got those certifications, those types of things for your own personal career. And then we map that back into your performance reviews. So each quarter, maybe you have a goal that you need to gain this level of experience. We track it to that and keep track of the status.
Yeah, interesting. So let me. I feel like we're just getting going here, but we've got to wrap up pretty quick. But let me ask you: you've done all this work. You've got the SmartSuite stuff you're doing. You're obviously putting into practice what you believe and what you recommend. But let me ask you if there were 3 takeaways that you would have as advice for our audience. What would those 3 takeaways be if they really wanted to optimize what they're doing and focus on what's most important, or of course relates to what's going to be most profitable?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple of that I preach to almost every entrepreneur that I have the chance to invest with in their company. The first one I like to say is, process matters. And what I mean by that is the processes in your company that you build need to promote ownership and accountability of people. Like people need to know what they're responsible for and that they can take ownership of that. And when you allow that to happen and you set the direction, right, it's taking more work away from the CEO or the founders. that's allowing people to get done. But then the owner needs to know, or the founder, when to step back in and review and help make that process better or improve things that are there. So I say process really matters. Whether you're using Excel for that, use a product like SmartSuite, use a project management tool, like assign people to tasks so they understand what's important. The second one that I like to say is, you're only as good as the people you hire. And if you don't spend time in the hiring process to hire the right people, the end result is just going to be mediocre, right? Like if you hire bad people and have a great process, it's still not optimized. You hire great people and have a great process, like people do exceptional things. So I try to promote that hiring process. I have a process that we follow kind of internally on how we attract and respond to candidates. And when we're excited about them, how we make sure that they understand we're excited. We don't like to play games in the recruiting. We like to know that, we're recruiting you as much as you're, evaluating us, as an employee. So we treat you that way from the very beginning, and we include your spouse for some of the more senior positions by interacting with the spouse as part of that process to make sure that everybody, really make sure that the spouse has buy-in, in the position that's happening. The third one, that's interesting. I think, remote work is really, it's taking over the software industry. And I think it's beginning to expand in, sales positions and marketing positions, outside of that. And just the fact that we have employees in 9 different locations or 9 different countries that's there. In the past, we've hired people based on, 30 miles from one particular geography that's in place. Now we're hiring people, the best talent we could find. We have a number of different ways that we find those people, but we really don't care the location. And in fact, we enjoy that we're working with people in different cultures, different parts of the company. It makes the overall culture of the company more interesting when you're on a call with 4 or 5 people that maybe in places you've never even visited, right? It just brings just a level of fulfillment and enjoyment to the job that maybe you wouldn't have if it was just a whole bunch of people like me sitting in one location, day after day.
I'm curious whether you've found the same thing that I've found, because we do some software development too on an LMS. And is that, and I think this applies to people who are not just doing software development, but that people work much better in sprints throughout the day or throughout the week. So like with our software, with all our people, we encourage them, work really hard for like 2 hours, then take that 10 or 15 minute break, just walk away. Same thing with lunch, you'll be more productive. But particularly with software developers, we find, hey, we want you to really focus on this thing for 1 week and don't let yourself be interrupted with other projects, other tasks, fix-its, whatever. And we've found that that's been more productive. You have much more software development than I've done. What have you found as far as how people should manage themselves, but then also as a software developer, how they can optimize their time?
Yeah, I think the first thing that every company needs to understand is that really good software developers are different than sales or marketing people, right? They're built different, right? And you have to treat them different, right? Each of those cohorts you have to treat differently. And they typically like a couple of things. They like to know what the deadline is in advance. They don't like to just work for the sake of working and not know, all right, this is the goal of when I'm trying to get it done. They like to know the tasks, the specific things they need to work on today and tomorrow and have that organized and be assigned to them where they can control it. And then they like to have control over their time. Like in our case, I don't really care if you work from 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or I look at 24-hour blocks, and as long as it's the next morning, these things have been accomplished, it's up to you to kind of manage your schedule. So we have some developers that do, like you said, they'll work for 3 or 4 hours, really heads down, hard stuff. And then they need a mental break for a couple of hours. Like they need to go do something, just get away, and then they come back at it again. And the millennials and Gen Zers are the ones that are very different in that realm. People my generation are used to just working 8 or 9 hours at a sitting. That's just the way it's always been. This new generation, not so much. They like to travel quite a bit. They don't typically live in the same location for long periods of time, even in the same country that's there. And they like to have that freedom over the work hours that they have.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I find that we really have to train people how to manage their time so that but I'm with you. I don't care what hours you work, as long as you put in the hours. and we're getting the outcomes that we mutually agreed upon. So that's great. So Jon, how can people learn more about you and what you're doing? And I really appreciate everything you brought to light today.
Yeah, I would say, connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just Jon Darbyshire. Happy to connect back with you, or come to SmartSuite.com and check out what we're doing at SmartSuite, and or just email me. It's just JonJoN@SmartSuite.com.
Fabulous. Thanks so much for being on the show.
All right, I appreciate it. It's great. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for tuning in today. If you like the episode with Jon, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave us a comment or a rating. We'd love to hear feedback. Also, keep that in mind. And check out Habitly.com, our sponsor, where you can learn best practice habits, the habits of highly successful people, learn how to manage meetings well, but learn how to set and achieve goals. We covered that in the podcast today. And becoming a great leader, other things, that's great. And don't forget, we've got more great guests coming, so stay tuned. We'd love to have you back. Bye for now.